There are moments in life when everything seems to fall apart. Days when you wake up and don't even know when things started to crumble. You try to stay firm, but you feel the ground shifting beneath your feet. The plans that once seemed secure collapse, health weakens, doors close, and even the people you trusted turn their backs on you. It's in those moments, when everything begins to go wrong, that the heart most needs to remember a powerful truth. God is still with you. He has not left, He has not forgotten you, and even though everything seems dark, His presence remains steadfast, silent, but real. Dear listener, this message does not come by chance. If you are here, it's because God wanted to speak to you, because He knows what you are facing, the tears no one sees, the thoughts you keep to yourself, and the battles you fight in silence. He knows your weariness and your desire to move forward even when life seems to push you back. Today, this word is for you, to remind you that God's power is not measured by what you see, but by what He is doing even when you don't understand it. If this message touches your heart, I invite you to like, comment, and share it. When you do, you help YouTube recommend this video to more people who also need it, people who are going through difficult times and who may have no other space to hear that God is still working. Truly, your support can be a blessing to others who are on the verge of giving up. And so that we can raise a declaration of faith together, I invite you to comment this phrase: God is with me. It's short but powerful. It's a way to tell heaven that even when everything begins to go wrong, you still believe that He is in control. First part, when everything begins to fall apart. Dear listener, there are seasons in life when we feel that everything is out of control. And no, it's not that God has stopped taking care of you. It's that He is working in a way your mind cannot yet comprehend. Sometimes God allows everything to shake, not to destroy you, but to show you that what remains firm does not depend on the world, but on Him. When things start going wrong, our first thought is often that we did something wrong, or that God has forgotten us. But the truth is, many times those difficult moments are the very ground where God builds your character, your faith, and your destiny. Look at what Psalm 34 verse 19 says: "Many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord delivers him from them all." That means that problems are not a sign of God's absence, but an opportunity to see His faithfulness in action. The righteous also suffer. Those who pray also cry. Those who trust also stumble. But there is a difference. Those who have God do not fall to stay on the ground. They fall to rise stronger, with greater faith and with a greater purpose. Sometimes the path to the promise passes through a process, and that process is not always pleasant. Think of Joseph, the young man who dreamed of greatness, but before seeing that dream fulfilled, he was betrayed by his brothers, sold as a slave, falsely accused and thrown into prison. If anyone could have said that everything was going wrong, it was him. Yet behind every fall, God was moving the pieces of his destiny. Every moment of pain was drawing him closer to the position the Lord had prepared for him. What seemed like the end was actually the beginning of the fulfillment of His purpose. The same thing happens with you. Maybe today you don't understand why things are going wrong, why life seems to close doors on you, or why some paths have suddenly broken. But remember this: when God allows something to fall, it's because He is about to lift up something better. Sometimes He must remove the old to make room for the new. He must let the wind shake your life to clear away what no longer serves you and leave what truly sustains you. You won't always feel His presence with the same intensity. You won't always hear His voice clearly, but that doesn't mean He's not with you. God's silence is not indifference, it's preparation. There are battles He fights in the unseen where your eyes cannot reach, but your faith must remain steady. God has not left you. He is not against you. He is working deeply within, even when you think everything is being lost. When life seems to break apart, that's when you should look up the most, because those who look down only see the rubble, but those who lift their eyes to God see hope, purpose, and redemption. There are promises that only bloom in the desert, because it's only in pain that we learn to depend completely on the Lord. Remember what Isaiah said in chapter 43, verse 2. "When you pass through the waters, I will be with you, and through the rivers, they shall not overflow you. When you walk through the fire, You shall not be burned, nor shall the flames scorch you. Notice that it doesn't say if you pass. It says when you pass. That means there will be waters, there will be rivers, there will be fire. But in all those situations, God promises His presence. He doesn't stop the storm, but He walks with you through it. He doesn't extinguish the fire, but He keeps you safe within the flames. He doesn't remove the trial, but He strengthens you in the midst of it. There's a hidden purpose in every difficulty. Every tear you shed has weight in heaven. God doesn't waste your pain. Everything you go through, even what feels like loss, is being used to transform you and lead you to a higher level of faith. Sometimes the Lord has to remove what gives you false security so that you learn to trust only in Him. He has to close paths you wanted to take to guide you to the one that will lead to your true destiny. Dear listener, don't think everything is going wrong just because you don't see results. God doesn't need to show you His plan to be at work. He hasn't forgotten you. Every day that seems dark, He is using it to form in you the patience, humility, and faith you'll need to sustain the blessing that's coming. The Lord doesn't improvise. Everything has a purpose, and even if it looks like you're losing, you may actually be being prepared to win something far greater. Do not fear the process. Do not despair over what is falling apart. Sometimes ruin is the prelude to restoration. What looks like an ending today may be the beginning of something divine. God doesn't need stability to work. He needs hearts that trust Him in the midst of chaos. And if you keep believing even when you don't understand, I assure you, you'll see His hand lifting you when you least expect it. Perhaps today everything feels uncertain, but faith isn't about having all the answers. It's about trusting the one who does. Faith doesn't mean understanding. It means remaining. And those who remain will always see the glory of God. So don't be afraid if everything starts to go wrong, because in what looks like your defeat, God is writing your victory. You are not alone, you are not forgotten, you are not lost. You are in process, and God's process always ends in purpose. Second part, keeping faith when everything falls. Dear listener, one of the hardest things in life is to keep faith when everything starts to fall apart, because it's easy to believe when everything goes well, when doors open, when prayers are answered quickly, and when things seem to flow in your favor. But true faith is proven when you don't understand anything and still trust, when you see no way out and still believe, when everything seems lost and still you wait. It's in that point that faith becomes more than a word. It becomes a decision, a posture of the soul that says, even if I don't see it, I still trust. Even if I don't understand it, I still believe. Even if it hurts, I still walk forward. Keeping faith in the middle of chaos doesn't mean denying reality. It means recognizing that there is a higher reality that rules over all, the reality of God's power. And that's where your spiritual maturity is measured, because the closer you get to your purpose, the stronger the trial becomes. Sometimes, when you are about to see a great blessing, the enemy will try to shake everything around you to make you doubt, to exhaust you, to make you quit right before the breakthrough. But if you stay firm, if you keep believing even when everything seems to collapse, you will discover that God is never late. He always arrives at the perfect time. Faith is not an emotion that rises and falls with circumstances. It's a conviction that stands even if the world falls. It's believing that God is still God, even when you don't understand His silence. It's trusting that He's working even when you don't see it. Sometimes heaven seems silent, but no, it's not absent. It's working in the invisible, preparing paths, touching hearts, moving circumstances you can't even imagine. Think about Job. He lost everything, his family, his wealth, his health. He was left without strength, without explanations, without answers. Yet in his pain he said, "Though he slay me, yet will I trust him." That is faith. That is real belief. Not because things are easy, but because you know that outside of God, there is no safer refuge. Job didn't understand what he was living, but his trust didn't depend on what he saw. It depended on who his God was, and in the end, the Lord not only restored what he had lost, but blessed him double. Dear listener, you may be living something similar. Maybe there are areas in your life falling apart, projects that didn't turn out as expected, people who turned their backs on you, or an illness that won't go away. But remember this, faith doesn't mean everything will go according to your plans. It means that no matter what happens, God still has control. He doesn't improvise. He's not surprised. He doesn't lose direction. He sees what you cannot, and while you cry over what you lost, He is already preparing what you will receive. When your faith is being tested, it's not because God has abandoned you, it's because He's strengthening you. Just as fire refines gold, trials refine faith. The Apostle Peter said it clearly, that the trial of your faith, being much more precious than gold, may be found to result in praise, glory, and honor when Jesus Christ is revealed. That means trials don't come to destroy you. They come to make shine what God has already placed inside you. Faith doesn't remove pain, but it teaches you to walk through it with purpose. Faith doesn't prevent the storm, but it gives you strength to endure it. Faith doesn't always change circumstances, but it changes how you face them. And that's what makes the difference between those who collapse and those who stand firm. In the darkest moments, when it seems God isn't responding, He's watching how you react, not because He needs to know, but so you can discover the strength He has placed within you. Because no real faith exists that hasn't passed through the fire of testing. There is no spiritual maturity without seasons of silence, pain, or uncertainty. But likewise, there is no glory without process, no resurrection without a cross, no victory without battle. Even Jesus lived it. In Gethsemane, He knelt before the Father and said, "If it's possible, let this cup pass from me." He was anguished, He knew what was coming, but He added something that changed history forever. "Yet not my will, but yours be done." That is the prayer that sustains God's children amid chaos. It's not about understanding everything. It's about trusting that His will is always perfect, even when it feels hard. When everything falls apart, remember this: God is not against you. He is working within you. What seems like loss may actually be training. Some prayers aren't answered immediately because God is more interested in transforming you than pleasing you. He doesn't seek to give you a life without problems, but a heart that learns to trust even in the middle of them. Dear listener, keeping faith doesn't mean not being afraid. It means moving forward despite fear. It's waking up each morning and saying, "Lord, I don't understand what you're doing, but I trust you." And every time you do that, heaven moves in your favor, because faith doesn't only attract miracles, it attracts presence, strength, and direction. Remember, the storm doesn't last forever. No trial is eternal. The same God who allowed the desert also prepared the promised land. The same one who let Lazarus die was the one who raised him. The same one who allowed the cross was the one who brought resurrection. What hurts today can be tomorrow's testimony. What breaks you today can be your greatest lesson tomorrow. What seems like chaos today can become the doorway to your blessing. So don't give up, don't go back, don't lose faith. Every day you decide to trust, you defeat the enemy. Every tear you shed in hope is a seed God will use to make your victory bloom. And when it's all over, you'll understand that the Lord never let you go, that He was always with you even when you thought you were alone. Third part, God's presence in the midst of pain. Dear listener, when life gets hard and everything seems to collapse, the easiest thing to think is that God has distanced Himself. The silence of heaven can feel so loud that you start to believe your prayers vanish into the air. You kneel, speak, cry, and it seems nothing happens. But let me tell you something important. God's silence doesn't mean His absence. It means His nearness in a different form. Sometimes, when you can't hear Him, it's because He's acting. When you can't see Him, it's because He's working behind the scenes. God doesn't always manifest Himself in thunder and lightning. Sometimes, He shows Himself in stillness, in the invisible, in what cannot be touched but can be deeply felt in the heart. The prophet Elijah experienced that. After a great victory, he fell into deep despair. He felt alone, exhausted, and without strength. He ran into the desert and asked God to take his life. He was done. But at that moment of pain, God appeared to him in a very special way. Scripture says there came a great wind, but God was not in the wind. Then an earthquake, but He was not in the earthquake. Then a fire, but He was not there either. Finally there came a gentle whisper, and in that soft voice was God. That teaches us that many times, when everything falls apart, the Lord doesn't manifest in the loud, but in the gentle, not in the noise, but in inner peace, not in immediate results, but in the calm that allows you to move forward without understanding everything. There are moments when God surrounds you with His presence without needing words. That presence doesn't remove the pain, but it transforms it. Because when you know He is with you, the weight of the burden changes. You keep walking, but not alone. You keep crying, but not hopelessly. You keep facing the problem, but with the certainty that you are not abandoned. That's the difference between those who have faith and those who don't. God didn't promise a life without suffering, but He did promise His eternal companionship. In Deuteronomy chapter 31, verse 6, it says, "Be strong and courageous. Do not fear or be dismayed, for the Lord your God goes with you. He will not leave you nor forsake you." That promise is so deep it crosses centuries and remains true today. No matter what you're facing, God goes with you. You may not see Him, but He is opening the way. You may not feel Him, but He is sustaining you. You may not hear Him, but He is guiding you. Dear listener, sometimes God lets you walk in darkness not to punish you, but to teach you to trust His voice instead of your sight. Faith is not about seeing, it's about believing. And when everything gets dark, when the path has no signs, when you feel like you're walking aimlessly, that's when your faith is truly tested. Because believing when everything goes well is easy, but believing when everything goes wrong proves that you truly trust Him. There's a story that shows this clearly. In the Gospel of Mark, chapter 4, it says that Jesus and His disciples were in a boat crossing the sea. Suddenly, a great storm arose. The waves beat against the boat, the wind roared, and the water began to fill it. The disciples panicked and ran to wake Jesus, who was sleeping. They said, "Teacher, don't you care that we perish?" And Jesus calmly stood up, rebuked the wind and the sea, and everything became completely still. Then He said, "Why are you afraid? Do you still have no faith?" That story reveals something profound. Jesus was in the boat, but they forgot He was there. The storm wasn't sinking them because they lacked strength. It was sinking them because they forgot who was with them. The same happens to us. When fear, pain, or anxiety take hold of the heart, we forget that the same God who calmed the seas also dwells in our storms. He doesn't always stop the storm immediately, but He is always within it, holding your boat, making sure you don't sink. God is closer than you think. Sometimes you will see Him in a word that arrives just in time, in someone who encourages you when you need it most, in an opportunity you didn't expect, or in the peace you inexplicably feel after praying. That is His presence at work. He doesn't always change what's outside, but He always transforms what's inside. And when your heart changes, the world around you begins to change too. When everything goes wrong, seek His presence. Don't run away from Him. Come closer. Don't stop praying, even if it feels useless. Don't be silent, even if you don't hear a reply. Because every word you speak rises to heaven, and every tear you shed is seen by Him. The Bible says in Psalm 56, verse 8, "You have collected my tears in your bottle." That means nothing you feel goes unnoticed by God. Every tear has purpose. Every cry has its time for an answer. Every silence has a divine reason. Dear listener, maybe you are in a season without answers, but with presence, and that's enough. Because when God's presence is with you, it doesn't matter what the enemy plans. It doesn't matter what collapses. It doesn't matter what's missing. Nothing can defeat you. He is your refuge, your shield, your strength, and your peace. So next time you feel that everything is going wrong, don't say, "God abandoned me." Say, "God is working." Don't say, "I can't take it anymore." Say, "God is sustaining me." Don't say, "It's all over." Say, "God is beginning something new," because the language of faith transforms reality. When you speak faith, heaven moves. When you declare hope, the enemy retreats. And when you affirm that God is with you, everything that seemed impossible begins to align in your favor. Remember, God's presence doesn't depend on what you feel. It depends on what He promised. And He promised to be with you every day until the end of the world. That promise doesn't change, doesn't break, doesn't delay. It stands firm even when you waver. Fourth part, when God allows everything to get worse before it gets better. Dear listener, one of the hardest truths to accept in the spiritual life is that many times things get worse right before they get better. And no, it is not that God has forgotten you or that He is punishing you. It is that there are moments when the Lord allows the darkness to grow thicker right before dawn. Because there are battles that are only won when everything seems lost. There are blessings that are only born in the midst of chaos. And there are processes that are only completed when God breaks what you would never dare to let go of. If you look at the story of the Bible, you will realize that before every great victory, there was a moment of pain, confusion, or loss. Before the resurrection, there was a cross. Before the freedom of the people of Israel, there were plagues and deserts. Before Daniel was honored, he was thrown into the lion's den. Before Joseph ruled Egypt, he was betrayed, sold, and imprisoned. In all those cases, God allowed things to appear to get worse, but in reality, He was preparing a stage to show His glory. Sometimes the Lord has to let you reach the end of your strength so that you discover that yours were never enough and that it is His power that truly sustains your life. He allows resources to run out, doors to close, and people to walk away, because He wants you to understand that your provision does not come from what is visible, but from what is eternal. When everything collapses, the soul becomes more sensitive to heaven. When you have nowhere left to run, that is when you finally look up and discover there was always a hand waiting for you. God does not need everything to be in order to work. On the contrary, He specializes in working in the midst of chaos. He is not afraid of disorder, because where human beings see ruin, He sees the opportunity to create something new. From the beginning in the book of Genesis, the earth was formless and empty, and in that setting God said, "Let there be light." In the midst of the void, He spoke, and everything made sense. The same happens with you. Perhaps you feel that your life is disordered, empty, without direction. But the same God who created the universe with His word can give shape and purpose to everything that hurts you today. Dear listener, there are times when God does not remove the storm because He wants to teach you to walk over it. He wants to show you that His power is made perfect in your weakness. He wants to teach you to depend on Him, not on circumstances. That is why He sometimes allows the fire to burn hotter, not to consume you, but to purify you. Gold does not shine until it passes through fire, and the character of a child of God is not strengthened until it goes through testing. Think of Moses. Before he could free the people, he had to flee into the desert. He spent years far from the palace, forgotten, tending sheep, never imagining that God was using that time to prepare him. In that desert, he learned humility, patience, and obedience. Everything that seemed like a setback was actually part of his training. The same may be happening to you. What you feel today as a fall may be the very place where God is forming you. What looks like a detour may be the exact path He planned. There is something you must understand. God does not aim for comfort. He aims for growth. He is not seeking for everything to go well for you. He seeks for your heart to align with His purpose. That is why when everything starts to go wrong, instead of asking yourself why, start asking what for. Because when you look at things with spiritual eyes, you understand that behind suffering, there is always a seed of transformation. Sometimes God has to allow your plans to break so that His can be fulfilled. And although it hurts, it is necessary, because if everything always went well, you would never know the depth of His grace. You would never discover what it means to depend completely on Him. You would never know what it is to experience a miracle if you never had to wait for one. Remember that the Lord does not work in a rush. He works with purpose. He sees your life from beginning to end and knows when each piece must fit. It may look disordered now, but He is weaving a story that will end up perfect. What you see as chaos today will be tomorrow's testimony that will move you to tears of gratitude. And there is something in God's heart that is only revealed when pain touches your life. Because when you cannot go on, He shows that His grace can. When you think the fire will consume you, He covers you with His presence. When the sea seems to block your way, He opens it before you. These are the experiences that change your faith forever. Because when you pass through them, you no longer just believe in God. You come to know Him. The Apostle Paul understood this when he wrote in Romans chapter 8, verse 28, And we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good. It does not say some things, it says all. That includes losses, failures, delays, disappointments, and even silence. Everything, absolutely everything, is under His control. You may not understand how, but if you remain faithful, one day you will look back and say, every tear, every weight, every silence was worth it. Dear listener, do not despair if the path grows darker before dawn. Do not think God has let you go. No, He is guiding you to a new beginning. Sometimes what looks like the end is only the beginning of the miracle, because God works in what is hidden, and while you think everything is collapsing, He is building what you asked for, but in His way, not yours. Trust that every step, even the painful ones, brings you closer to purpose. Even if the fire burns hotter, even if the tears do not stop, even if the days are long and heavy, God is still with you. And soon, when the trial passes, you will understand that everything that seemed to go wrong was actually being used to lead you to a better place. So do not fear when everything seems to get worse, because it is a sign that God is about to reveal something new. Roots grow deeper before fruit appears. Pain precedes growth. Night precedes dawn. And disorder precedes creation. If everything seems to be falling down, it is because something glorious is about to rise. And when that moment comes, you will know that God never abandoned you, that He was with you at every step, in every tear, in every silence. You will discover that things did not break to destroy you, but to rebuild you stronger, wiser, and fuller of faith.